Hello and welcome back to another episode of Malachi's Message, Toxic Mold Sex Stories. I'm Elizabeth Kripe, co-founder and executive director of Malachi's Message. Co-hosting today, Emilee Rochelle. She is the co-founder and board director of Malachi's Message. She's also my sanity most of the time dealing with stuff with Malachi's Message. Emilee, thank you so much for doing this with me today. I'm super excited for this interview. We have Emilee Brown. She is very well, versed with military housing and the issues that have been going on with military housing and mold. And we get the privilege of hearing her story and hearing about the things she has learned in dealing with trauma and how she's worked through a lot of stuff, which we are so excited to hear specifically about that. Emilee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Emilee, thank you for coming on. I know you've been through such an ordeal over the last few years and you're still fighting. Before you get into what happened to you and your family, can you kind of describe your life, like your family's life before y'all ever experienced mold?
Yeah, I guess if I were to describe our family in just like one word, it would be radiant prior to this happening. We were always doing something fun and we were the type of family that was always out exploring. We loved traveling, we loved hiking, camping. We were just always out doing something energetic. The kids were playing sports and just loving life. Ironically, I was always really health conscious. So we were always like very conscientious on what we put on our bodies and what was around us. I was pursuing my degree in public health, and my husband, prior to the mold, had been in for 18 years.
That's incredible. So was mold something that was even on, I'm going to veer a little bit here, sorry, but was mold something that was even on your guys' radar before you started your journey?
Not really. I mean, I'm originally from Maine, and so it wasn't something that I, in that type of climate, it's not something that we would experience, and it would grow so quickly with the colder temperatures. So it's nothing that I had ever really come in contact with or ever experienced or would ever be on my radar.
Quick question, since you were pursuing your degree in public health, was that ever brought up, anything about mold?
No. Of course, you have the 5 pathogens, and that's obviously one of them is fungus, but other than that, not really. Certainly not any of the health effects.
So what process did your family go through to figure out that mold was the culprit? And did you guys face any medical illnesses at the time? What was that process? What did it look like?
That rough is what it looked like. So we moved into, my husband got orders to PCS, which is Permanent Change of Station, to Fort Hood, which is in Texas. And we decided to move on post. We moved in June 2018. I immediately started having physical reactions in illnesses. I just brushed it off as stress. I remember the day that we were moving in and signed the lease, I had a horrible headache, and I just brushed it off as we had been through a lot, and also the changing climates. We also noticed it with the kids as well. I remember the day that I was unpacking boxes thinking, I feel so sick and so just depleted, which was new. And I just figured it was, we're getting older. My husband's been in for 18 years and this isn't our first move. And it's just, adding up and taking a toll. And that October, Central Texas experienced a rainstorm, typical Texas rainstorm. And we woke up that morning to our carpet completely saturated. And the water it was essentially raining on the inside through the walls, and went downstairs. It was pooling into the dining room and the kitchen. We were in that home for 3 weeks. following that. It's really hard to put into words. I couldn't think. I couldn't have fought my way out of a wet paper bag. I couldn't. It's a miracle that the kids got to school every day. And that's just like the brain fog. It was just detrimental to all of us. And unfortunately, you know, throughout the whole process, you know, it didn't really let up. Over the course of our lease with the privatized military housing partner, we had been displaced over 400 days. There was no resolution. During that 400 days, we'd actually been placed into 2 other homes. So the second home we were actually vacated out of because of toxic mold in the air samples that their third-party contractor found. Additionally, the third house was just arguably as toxic, if not more. And we were there for the longest amount of time, which was almost a year. So it was hard to determine, you know, when we were in the second house, of course, you know, we got even more symptoms, and some things got better, some things got worse. And so we just figured that it was originally from the first house, and we're just starting to heal. And then, you know, by the time we got to the third house, I mean, we were just kind of done. Our body is just kind of, everything that every system essentially that could be affected was, and that was really rough. You know, emotionally, it just affected everything with our, you know, physical illnesses, you know, emotional and mental health, even like our spirituality and faith, you know, was definitely tested. And that was really hard, especially being that sick, you know. We just didn't really have much of a fighting chance. But we discovered it was mold through their third party mold assessor.
So all 3 of these homes that your family were placed in, were these all homes that were on Fort Hood, like military homes?
In 3 different villages.
And how many kiddos do you have, Emilee?
I have 2.
You have 2, and you were displaced for over 400 days.
Yes. I remember the third house, just the ability of getting them to school, because we, you know, obviously we had to transport them for continuation of them to go to the school for their stability. I don't know how I did it. Looking back, I still don't know how I was able to accomplish it, because just getting out of bed, I remember waking up in the morning astonished that I was waking up in more pain and more tired than how depleted and exhausted and in pain I was the night before. And it just was exponentially, you know, it affected us in such a way that we never would have imagined that even the third house was toxic.
Were you, because, you know, military moms, in my opinion, are like some of the strongest people on this planet, because, you know, a lot of times you guys are kind of a single parent, you know, when your spouse is deployed for months or years at a time. Was your husband in the picture, or was he deployed, or were you doing this all on your own?
So for the most part, he was home. When we found mold, when the privatized military housing partner called to let us know that in the second home, Stachybotrys was in the air. My husband had actually just left to go to training. So he was gone. It was only 30 days that time, but when he got back, he had no clothes, I mean, we had to stay in a hotel over the weekend for them to find us the third house. He essentially came home to nothing and didn't even know where he was coming home to. For us, what that looked like is, moving very sick kids, with myself being sick, into, a hotel room that was grotesque at best, having to take my dog out, and just the transitioning. And, we literally didn't take much with us, if anything. I think we maybe took the kids' backpacks just to hold us over, and had to go out that weekend and buy everything. I think they had one set of pajamas, and when we got to the hotel, we just chucked them. It was definitely devastating and hard. It's not, my first time, single parenting as a military spouse, but it was really hard on him. When he was in training, there's a section of training in which they can't make any phone calls out. One of my last calls to him was, I think it was the day or the following day after we found out that it had, we had been exposed to mold in that house again, and we were going to lose everything. And one of my last calls was from the urgent care telling him, half my face isn't responding and not moving, and I need to go. They're sending me to the emergency room to make sure I'm not stroking out, essentially, because I explain it like, it literally just broke my smile, going through that. And it was a lot, and for him, that he can't do anything about that, and he is so far away. It was rough. It's still rough to know that, and still hard for him.
So essentially, trying to rectify the situation, the privatized housing just moved you guys to rectify the first house to a second house with mold, and then moved you to a hotel that was grotesque, and moved you to a third house in the process. So nothing ever actually changed in a positive manner any of those times. What was the overall time span from the first house to the third house?
It was June 2018 to, we finally moved out December 21st, 2019. So about a year and a half. They were not responding. So there had been verbal agreements that everything that was in the first house was contaminated or cross-contaminated at a minimum. And so they were going to reimburse us for everything that couldn't be saved, and everything that wasn't sentimental that couldn't be remediated successfully. So, looking back, it's like, why did we stay? And that was the hardest thing is, looking back, had I known or had the information that I had at the end, we would have left the first time. But, we were waiting for that first house to be successfully remediated appropriately, and for the reimbursement of our household goods. And that never came. But looking at, we had already depleted our savings. By the third house, having to replace everything, having to do that again and literally walk out with the clothes on our backs into a rental, it was just financially devastating. And I wish we had done it sooner. I felt like we were strung along, that there was going to be a resolution, especially by, the military side. And unfortunately, that was far from the case.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry you guys went through that. I'm just hearing that and I'm going, I can't imagine as a mom moving that often, how overwhelming, like that just consumes your life, right? Like to just do any other normal facet of life is almost a luxury at that point. Is that like, that's just the sense I'm getting. Like, how do you even function and do normal things in life with all of that happening?
You
That's
don't.
amazing. Yeah.
You don't. And it still affects us. And that's the hardest thing that I think a lot of people just don't understand. Yesterday, my son came home and he showed me that he knows how to tie his shoes. He had known how to tie his shoes prior to moving into mold, and he had lost that ability. And we had struggled, in that third house. I remember spending hours, and he was so frustrated that he just couldn't get it. And when you're in it, you're just trying to put out the fires. Even still, we're firefighters, my husband and I, at this point, because it's like, who's on fire? You're the one getting attention that day. So I remember so vividly certain aspects and working with him and the struggle just to remember the steps to tie his shoes. And then yesterday he came home and he finally understood and was able to do it. And, he is extremely intelligent. It was just, I had been watching a podcast on, I think it was Mary Akerley, and how in mold you can't assimilate new information. And I saw that. I experienced that, out at the ranch. I couldn't tie a daisy chain for a year and a half. so it's so hard just, and then thinking something so simple as tying your shoes. And even now, I feel like there's been so much time that we have lost that we'll never get back. We're always going to be chasing that time of all of the things that, needed to be addressed at the time as parents that we would have been teaching our children. And now going back to try to figure out where are the gaps that we missed. And we've always been very active parents, and we, and there was so many gaps that we missed the opportunities, or, tying his shoes was just so reflective and telling of one of those gaps that we never got back to, even since we've been out of mold, that just those basic things that he had lost in it, and those skill sets, getting back to them. There is no normal. There is no normal at this point. It's running to chase what we've missed and what has been stolen from us, essentially.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to thank one of our sponsors, and we want to come back and hear about everything you've been doing with equine therapy and trauma training and your MAC licensing. Today, we want to thank Texas Mold Inspectors. They're one of our corporate sponsors. Texas Mold Inspectors, or TMI, is a true unbiased third-party state licensed mold assessment company with a strict no referral policy. Their company got into the industry because they experienced mold themselves. Their story is also online. If you go to their website, you can watch it and look at it. It's beautiful. They wanted to help people the way that they wish someone would have helped them. TMI has grown to be one of the best and most trusted in the industry. They're recognized and referred by attorneys, doctors, clients, and good contractors. They also just started testing out of state. They are currently in Texas, but they are testing out of state. So if you would like more information on their services or how to get them to come visit you, even if you are not in the state of Texas, to do a license inspection, please go to texasmoldinspectors.com. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Emilee, before we get into your equine stuff and your MAC, can you kind of tell us where your family's at today after y'all left those toxic environments?
So we're still impacted, whether that's illness, physically, emotionally, mentally. We essentially got to the end of this. We have all been in survival mode for years, and we're sitting across the table going, we don't even know each other anymore. So, we had to relearn who we are. We had all changed so much. And healing is certainly not linear. It's a long-term process. So trying to facilitate as a mom that growth and that healing in all aspects, it still is the most major role in our lives right now, is just focusing on all aspects of healing. There are days where we'll see something, I call it the fainting goat syndrome, this point, fainting Emilee syndrome, because, we'll see something that just triggers, we'll see something that we used to have, or something that will remind us of this horrendous experience that we had. And it sends us, just a flood of emotions, as well as, memories. And it's completely unexpected. And you can't prepare for that. And so there's just so many triggers that we have to kind of put boundaries up around, and allow grace. The grace has been the biggest thing in healing our family, because, we check in with each other now, and, to find out, hey, where are you at? So that's kind of daily life in our household. Since then, I'm still pursuing my public health degree, which would have finished had this not happened. But one of the biggest aspects that I really wanted to implement is, in my program, is trauma-informed practices. So I've taken a course in trauma, mostly to understand and reflect why this impacted our family to the degree that it did. And I found, people with natural disasters, oftentimes the impact is much less, and they're less likely to experience post-traumatic stress disorder if their routines are able to be implemented and returned to at a faster pace. And looking back at what happened with our family, I mean, it was 2+ years. I would argue 3 before we really got back to some type of what any other family would look like as normalcy. Additionally, there's human caused traumas, which, there's both intentional and unintentional. And in our case, I feel that there's both. There's a factor of both of those in what happened to us. And I believe that people are inherently good, and to have our world rocked to that degree that this could be intentional, or at least it was intentionally not resolved in a fair manner, which continues to still impact us detrimentally, it's just a hard pill to swallow. And learning to heal from that, despite that, and in defiance of that, is really where I tried to lead our children. And they may not be sorry. They may never be sorry, but we have to forgive them for our own healing, and being able to let that go. Especially, for the military community, there's, those 3 factors of natural disaster, the human caused, whether intentional or unintentional. And as families speak out that are in these toxic, hazardous homes, they're ostracized and essentially threatened. And then the only access they have to medical care is medical doctors who are at minimum affiliated, if not work for, the Department of Defense. And, for the privatized military housing partner that we rented from, they are a partner to the Army. And so the conflict of interest is so vast that trust is the biggest thing. I had the hardest time trusting anyone. Even fellow military spouses or families, it just, you always have that border up of, can I trust you? And extending that has, it's been a challenge, but remembering, kind of circling back to, people are good, and where those things were shaken, trying to get back and foundationally build upon again. And that trust, it creates such fear. And that's something that we've really had to work on, is fear. Whether illogical or not, your body still experiences it. So those are some things that, since mold, also, the impact that you have living in fight or flight, for 2+ years. I mean, the dysregulation that happens physically, even when you logically can think through things, physically, it's just, you're still experiencing the trauma. So I've also been looking into somatic release and doing that with the horses, which is like the physical release, intentional and physical release of the trauma. And that's been helpful. It's pretty intense. So.
Yeah, I see pictures all the time popping up now of you and horses, and you just look happy. Like, you just look more at peace and happy when you are with a horse.
Yes, absolutely. Horses have always been just my soul work. Ever since, my mom will argue that I, came out of the womb yelling horse, like, so looking into why horses are healing, I discovered that horses are prey animals. And so in a herd setting, they're able to pick up on each other's energy if there's a predator, and their heart rate will actually go up. And so at a horse's most relaxed state, they have a six foot diameter around them, a radius in which their energy and their heart puts out energy. And when you're within that 6 feet, your heart will eventually start to match their heart rate. And that's at matching a horse's heart rate at their relaxed state is the most relaxed heart rate that a human can have. So I started looking into heart rate variability and how horses just naturally calm us down. And if we're feeling anxious, they're going to reflect that. And so it's really helped me with regulating physically. I could logically think through trauma and stress, but I couldn't get my body to regulate. So I kind of reverse psychologied myself and said, all right, well, I'm going to get on a horse. And if I'm anxious, then I'm actually putting myself in danger. So it was kind of just a force, coming down of, using that logic that I was still able to access and bringing my physical body and anxiety down. So I've been volunteering at an amazing nonprofit. It's Hoofbeats for Heroes, and working with soldiers that are in crisis. And I found, going through trauma and experiencing fight, flight, or freeze, it's really easy once you have experienced it to recognize it in another human. And having that ability, being able to go out and work with soldiers and veterans who aren't doing okay, and are in those states, and being able to let them know, like, they aren't alone, they're completely valid in how they're feeling, but there are ways to calm yourself down and to get, regulated again, and giving them what I've experienced from learning as a skill set in order to do that.
Wow. We'll make sure we put the link to that nonprofit too in with the comments for this.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing healing place, and they're doing amazing things. We call them horse angels out there because they really are. They really are. And some days you just go out and some days I just go out and whoever needs me is going to walk up to me, and that's the horse that just catches my vibe that day, I guess.
That's really cool. Emilee, are there any resources that you can share where people can go to learn more about this?
Yeah, there's equine assisted learning facilities all over the United States. So if that is something that calls to you, absolutely find them. Even if you can volunteer, just being around them can be so healing. Some other recommendations is just giving everybody around you grace. Mold really just rocks you to the core, this experience, and allowing grace. Everybody's not going to be at the same healing spot, and everybody is going to be on whole different planes, and just allowing each other grace. Look into somatic healing and energy healing, and really just finding yourself, spiritual or rooted in faith. It really was what got me to the point where I could even start healing. So hopefully somebody finds that helpful.
You even though went a step further, and you actually went through the training to become a mold assessment consultant.
Yes, I have completed the training. I have yet to take the exam, but do plan on it. And I'm not really sure where that's going to lead. I have always been inquisitive by nature, and really kind of wanted to understand everything that had not been done correctly, and to try to understand where the intention lied. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I'm sure that God has some type of a plan. And, but I think just having the validation that there were so many times going through this that what I had brought up as concerns was deflected and dismissed, that it was something I really needed to prove to myself that, I'm not incorrect in my assumptions of the obvious water intrusions.
I love that. That's how Josh and I got started with our company, because we wanted to understand if we were being lied to by all the contractors involved, and we were.
Yeah, I was astonished at how much deception there was. And that was, part of that intentional human caused trauma. And that's been rough. But I wanted to also, we had other military families that had gone through this, and I had started a advocacy group for military families here at Fort Hood. And I wanted to be able to give them better advice and more resources as to what to do. And, while I certainly don't see myself going into moldy houses, at least being able to have the knowledge to give them the correct resources, and hopefully be a guiding light for them to get out and heal.
You're beautiful, like your soul. You just have such a beautiful soul, Emilee. Like everything you have said today is growth mindset, and it's about helping your family and helping others and helping yourself heal. It's just you said earlier, you said radiant, I think, and that word comes back, like what you're doing it's shining light on so many things and so many areas of healing that people need. Thank you so much. Like truly, it's a gift for people that get to know you and get to know this part of you.
Thank you. I hope that everybody can find healing. No one deserves this, that's for sure. And the military families, they need help and they need to be heard. Throughout all the advocacy that's been done, it's not enough. It is not enough. These companies need to be just closed down completely.
So we want to put out there as kind of our call to action for this. We have, based on actually your story and many other stories we heard, we created a military's Families Matter Fund. And basically we want to help make sure military families can get inspections from licensed inspectors that aren't necessarily associated with the privatized housing of the military if they need that. So if you are hearing your story and you're going, yeah, we need to make sure some of these families can receive that help, please go to our website. It's a specific fund. It's restricted giving. None of the giving that goes to that fund goes anywhere else in our organization. We just want to make sure that these families, if they get a test back that says, hey, there's not mold, and they're going, well, my hair is falling out, there's mold, they can go hire an inspector of their choice that's licensed. So please check that out. We will put the links to everything Emilee has talked about in our comments. Emilee, again, thank you so much. We've loved having you on and hearing your story.
Thank you. And thank you guys for everything you're doing. And it's so needed. It's so needed to have these unbiased contractors to go in and mold assessors to test. So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.